Hey everybody, I'm back. It's Saturday, and what I'm going to be doing is probably going to horrify some people. But what I decided to do is I have a few extra water coolers hanging around. I'm going to take one MSI water cooler that has it's an AIO. I'm going to cut the hose and I'm going to add it on, and I'm going to put in a little plug for a couple companies, and I am not getting sponsored, but this is Alpha Cool radiator. And the thing that I like about this radiator that's making me want to do this is I am going to be putting an AIO water block from the MSI onto this using the hoses. I don't like the rubber hoses that you can see through. I just think they look cheesy. But if somebody likes them, that's great. I mean, if they like it, it's all on them. But the reason I wanted to go with this is something that I seen on this that I really did admire. And if you can see right in there, do you see that lip right underneath where the two screw holes are? That's a protective metal liner that goes all the way around this entire radiator. I've seen people before go right through the fins and into the radiator and damage it. With this, you can't. You can't do it with any screws. That little plate stops it. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to go with it. Another reason is the standard AIOs. This is going to go on my wet bench, and I'm just doing this because I have some extra ones, and I had this thing that I got in from Alpha Cooling or Alpha Cool. This is the 45 millimeter radiator, and when you measure it all together, that's the radiator. When you measure this, it comes up to about 60. It really gives some nice cooling. It has wider fins than your standard AIO, which allows for freer airflow. So what I have to do is put in some plugs, and I'm going to put in some fittings. And then from there, we're going to attach it all, and it's going to go on that wet bench that I built the other day. And I think it's going to look pretty cool. I'm bored. I got nothing to do. I'm waiting on some new equipment to come in. Maybe I can do some reviews, but in the meantime, it is what it is. So I'll be back in a couple minutes. Once I get some plugs in, I'll finish showing you how the plugs go in. I'll put the fittings in, and I'm going to attach some fans to it. I was actually going to get a 360, but they even have a bigger one. They have like a 420, but the wet bench doesn't take it. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. It's going to be kind of a cut and sliced video. So on the top part is where I plan on putting the fittings. I'm going to make sure I get the name the right side up. Basically, these are the plugs. They are G1/4. It's basically the British equivalent of their measurement. So it looks like G1/4. They can call it G1/4. But anyways, that's the thread type. This is the plug. And I dropped it. So you don't have to tighten these down to the point where you got to sock them. You can put them finger tight, then you use a screwdriver. Actually, a piece of plastic would be preferable if you get in there and just give it a little twist to snug it down. The fittings are going to go in the top part. What's nice about this radiator is it has so many. You also have a drain plug out back, but it does have so many areas so you can mount it, fit it pretty much any way you want. All right, so I'm back again. Okay, so on this part right here, we're using it's the G1/4 thread. I have one fitting in. These are 3/8. Now, this is something I couldn't find anywhere, and I was really disappointed. I found quite a few reviews on some people that broke their radiators or whatever. They were just doing builds, but nobody explained the sizes that these things run. Now, there's different sizes of the... When you're doing a radiator like this, you need to know the most important thing is the inner diameter. The inner diameter of the tubing that's on the pre-existing AIO or the tubing that you're going to buy, whether it's a solid color, something that has a sleeving on it, or if you're going to go with a clear and use some colored or even hard tubing. But you got to know the inside diameter. The inside diameter of this is 3/8. The inside diameter of some of the AIOs is either a 1/4 or 3/8. So I decided to use the MSI AIO water block because the tubing coming off of that is 3/8. I was actually going to go and use, because I have a couple, I also have a couple Cooler Master. I was going to use that, but I'm looking at the hose on it, and it doesn't quite look like it'll take a 3/8. It looks more like a 1/4. And the fittings for the 1/4 aren't in yet. So on that note, what we have is you have your fitting. And again, remember, please, the outside diameter of the hose on a 1/4 is usually 3/8. The outside diameter on a hose of a 3/8 inner diameter is usually a 1/2 inch. And it's also flexible. You may be able to stretch it a little bit. And I've even seen where you can take a drill if you need to make that hose. And I know it sounds scary, but it's rubber. And you're only going to have to drill in about a 1/2 inch if you just want to hone it out a little bit. It's not going to hurt it because you're going to be using sleeving, which I'm going to show you after. Shrink sleeving, shrink wrap sleeving, whatever. And that is almost like that's almost like using something that it tightens that hose right up on it. You can use a wire tie, you know, there's a number of things. I seen one guy putting those big chrome bracket things you use on cars. But okay, so here we go. See, very easy. It has a pretty aggressive thread on it. Everything on this is brass. Copper tubing. You don't want to mix different metals with copper because you do get a reaction to it. And I should have wrote the word down because it's a big one, but I'll get it. So basically, this goes in. All of them, everything has a rubber gasket on it. It all comes pre-made. Once it goes in, all you got to do is give it a little turn. You don't want to sock these down. You don't need to. You will squash the gasket. All right, I'm going to get the fans mounted on this, and I'll be back in a few minutes. All right, so I've got some fans mounted. I know you're going to look at it and probably say you're wondering which direction it goes in, the fans go in. But to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. It's an open air. It's moving air through there. So there's not like there's any restriction either way. It's getting air from the bottom and from the top. So one thing I just found out is Alpha Cool uses, I guess you could call it their own unique or maybe proprietary type of, this would be your standard screw that you get, fan screw. Whoop, way off. This is just, you know, with the head on it. Now, the one that comes with the Alpha Cool is a little bit different, and it is absolutely shorter. I'd say about 1/8 of an inch. So when you put this, if you try to put this in, for one, it doesn't thread in because this has a finer thread than this one. But it's okay because they do give you everything that you need Gotta love that. I was kind of hoping to do this video on a new camera that I had in my room, but I don't have everything set up yet. I actually picked up a web camera, and I'm going to give this company a plug. I mean, they're not paying me or anything like that, but it's AIO Media. It's a big webcam, and it's solid. And if you look at the size of the lens on this thing, it's incredible. It's 4K. It's got a 94-degree angle on it. It spins the camera itself up and down and does a complete 360. This thing is incredible. It is probably, I would say, on par. If anybody wants to go the cheaper way, it's not cheap. It's a $250 camera, but it's a lot cheaper than going with DSLR, or you're going to go with a mirrorless regular camera. Those are $600, $700, $800, $1,000. $250. I would say it's right on par with probably a beginner DSLR camera. 4K is incredible. It comes with great functionality. It comes with great settings for getting this thing. I mean, I can't say enough. This thing's awesome. You can't hardly tell the difference on video between this and another one. So here we are. Yes, I'm going to put some stickers on in there. I don't want to put the Cooler. I'm using Cooler Master fans, and I don't want to use those. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter one way or the other, but okay. So here we are. Kind of looking forward to now. Whenever you use these, get some antibacterial fluid for a water cooler. If you're doing an AIO like I'm doing here, you won't really need it. Just get some distilled water and use the fluid that comes out of your radiator and that's already in your block. And we'll get into how that's going to work after, because you have to run the pump with parts of this underwater until all the air's out of it and move it around and whatnot. But it's still not too hard. But you definitely, if you're going to run it, don't run it dry ever. You will burn it right out. But if you already have fluid in there, use distilled water, because it doesn't build up bacteria, and it's not erosive as regular water is. It doesn't have all the minerals and stuff in it. If I told you how you could make distilled water, you'd probably really shake your head. There's some crazy things you can make it out of, and the way it's made. You can make it at home, but all right. Something else you might want to remember. I don't know how many people do this, and I know I've forgotten it quite a few times, is when you're doing your fans, try to get all the wiring together. It makes things so much easier when everything comes together. I know in the past I've pulled off fans because the wires are hanging over here and over here, or over here and over there, or coming around. Put a little bit of time into thinking and planning out how you're going to do things. It's starting to come together quick. Okay, back to wrap this video up. I was going to go through the whole process of filming the pump getting filled, running the motor, letting everything circulate through, but what I'm going to do is basically, I just want to make this on how to put this setup together and where to go. When I go through the whole thing, what I'll do when I decide to fill it and run it, which is probably going to be later, I'll do that, a whole separate video. I'll pull off the plugs over here. Both hoses actually hook up the pump to the power on the power supply of the wet bench, and basically do that, followed right into hooking it, putting it on a CPU and setting it up, getting it running. But right now, this is what I wanted to show, because this is the video I wanted to do, because there was too many videos out there that didn't explain enough. So long story short, I was going to use the MSI water pump, but it turns out the water pump's built into the radiator on that, and I completely spaced it right out. So I put it back together, filled it up like brand new. It's back in there. I'll use it on a rig. Actually, whatever I put it on, because I did take it apart, I won't even charge for it. Yeah, it'll be a freebie. So I ended up going with the Cooler Master block. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, you use the Alpha Cool. Why didn't you go with the Alpha Cool setup? And I'm going to do one. They have a really nice pump with a water block built onto it. It's a square block. It's got a reservoir built onto it, and it's got a little window in the side. It's quite nice, actually, and you can pretty much see, your fill amounts and whatnot, and actually you can see the stuff moving through. The process, once this gets going, it's pretty much, I'm going to have to take the pump, put the power on it, submerge these underwater, just the hoses. I'm going to pre-fill this, and of course I'll pre-fill this, and once I get it going, I'll get the water. Actually, this isn't radiator cool. That's another thing I want to touch base on. A few things real quick. This isn't radiator coolant for a vehicle. That will clog and mess up the motor and these radiators. It's not right. The coolant that you're going to use in this, if you don't have any already from other radiators, you can get it from Alpha Cool. There's a number of different places. There's My Mods, Mod My Mod, really good place. Those people really were nice to me. And it tells you how to dilute it down, mix it with water and whatnot. And as far as little tools of the trade that are easier to use, is you might want to get something that's a powered, basically you put a SATA power to it. It has ARGB, and it has PWI. It has power. It has power plugs in it. So you got your power going in here, and of course you have these over here that go to the motherboard, so you can control it if you want to run the hub on it. But basically it's just a nice little tool to be able to kind of cut corners and pop my basically I got my cables right in here, just throw one on there, turn on the power supply, and bingo, we're off and running. Okay, so what I ended up doing is I cannibalized, well, actually the Cooler Master one I could actually put all back together and use it again, but this is the way I'm going to keep it. It's going to be my workbench. The 3/8 that were on this were a little bit big for this hose. This probably takes a little bigger than 1/4 of an inch, but I started thinking, you want it tight, you don't want it to leak. So I took a heat gun, I added a little bit of heat to it. The rubber was soft, it softened up a bit. While it was warm, I slid it right down over those 3/8. It should be 1/4. I ended up going with what is it? It's under a half, yeah, 3, something like that. And I slid it right over that valve or fitting. It went on. It's definitely snug. You can actually see probably how tight that is right there. I don't think that this thing, to be honest with you, can you see the little bulge? Yes, you can. So there it is. So you know that's on there tight. And I could probably shrink wrap it later, throw some shrink wrap over it, sock it down tighter. But to be honest with you, I'm just going to use probably one of these little washers. That's what I'm going to use on the pump end, because this is 1/4 inch. Okay. These are aluminum. You put them over there, give it a pinch, and bingo, you're off and running. So where you go from here is you're going to take your coolant, and you're going to need to put something under it. When you start filling everything and running, running everything, you're going to need like a big aluminum tray, like a Thanksgiving type tray or something. It's probably the easiest thing. And yeah, that's all you want to do. You want to just, I could probably use something a little bit. So there it goes, it's filling up. So long story short, that's pretty much the way that's going to work. It's not hard. It's pretty simple. I'm going to take a look at a couple of things before I wrap this video up. It's already longer, but I do want to go over some final thoughts and some information on things you need to look out, because really there was so many. If you want to see videos on how to fill a pump, there's tons of them out there. You want to see videos on types of radiators, there's tons out there. You want to just see videos on how to put in an AIO or even build a water, a hard tube. There's plenty out there. Actually, OG 10K Tech, he's on Twitch and also YouTube. He's got some great videos on doing builds. What I want to touch base on that I was really disappointed with is there's no information on the types of fittings and the size. And that's what we're going to go over, and that's going to wrap up this video. And when I put it on the wet bench and hook it all up, that'll be a completely separate video. So pretty much this is the way you can hear it actually going in there. It's probably already going into the radiator, so I'm going to stop here. Yeah, that pump is full. Probably still has air in it, but it's full. When you do, look at the amount that it used. Wow, that used a lot. This radiator is going to take a lot of fluid. Definitely take a lot of fluid. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely full. So what you're going to do is, like, I picked that right up. What you're going to do is you definitely want to keep something under here. You don't want to get on a table. I am going to be getting a shop eventually, instead of working out of my buddies, but I don't mind doing stuff at home. But anyways, long story short, I put a little rubber gaskets on these. You can get these. You can heat them up. They're kind of like a, if you want, you can use them for like a shrink type thing. I don't think they'll shrink too much, but they just kind of clean it up. You might want to trim them. On this one, I ended up trimming them, and then from here, you can pretty much see how it goes right on. You gotta pretty much work it on there. I don't think I'm gonna get it much further down than that. Okay, there we go. Okay, this one I already put on the bracket, the clamp, and then on this one I will put the clamp on. I just got to spin it around, and then the rest is going to be filling up the radiator when we're ready to install this, or even before. You make sure you got to turn it, twist it when you're filling it up, get all the air out of it. Then you're going to take both of these hoses, are going to end up submerged in fluid. Sometimes it's clear. You can actually use just distilled water, but it won't last as long. So you should get the the solvent that goes with it. Well, it's not solvent actually. It's an antibacterial, antifungal. It keeps distilled water is used because it doesn't have any minerals in it, and it won't have a reaction with any of the metals. Now, all the metal on this, except for some of the outside stuff, but even the plugs, they're all copper. Some companies, they use aluminum and copper. Bad idea. When you mix chemicals with these chemicals with two different metals like aluminum and copper, it causes a reaction. That reaction will cause corrosion. So the best bet is always try and make sure you do your planning and make sure you get everything all the same. Another thing that I seen on videos that people did about this is they were complaining that the fins, that these fins, and you might be able to see, they're not painted inside. And some companies do. What I want to tell you, to give you a little information before we wrap this up, is I'm going to give some specs. But what I do want to tell you is, there's a reason for that. When you paint something, especially those fins, you want air going across that metal, that copper, them copper louvers. If there's paint on it, the air is going to go smoothly across faster, and the heat distribution isn't going to be as good. That's why those copper fins in that radiator, louvers, whatever you might want to call them, that's why those things are all left unpainted. The company can paint them. They don't have a problem. I heard a few people complain, oh, they're too lazy to do it. No, they're not. They know what they're doing. This company knows what they're doing, and they know that you're going to get the most cooling, and it's probably going to be degrees, not a half a degree. It's probably going to be degrees cooler than if you paint those. Think about it. How do you stay warm? You layer. You start putting layers of paint on those, that's exactly what you're going to get. It's going to conserve the heat. You want it to disperse the heat. You want it to pull it off of that CPU as fast as possible. The reason for that is throttling. CPUs get hot, memory, VRAM, you name it, GPUs, they throttle back. You don't want that. Filling the pump up took quite a bit. I'm sure some went into the radiator. There's only a little bit of fluid left. It's not too bad. So this is the thing. On hoses, always make sure the outer diameter is important, of course, because you don't want a hose this big. But the outer diameter is important, but the inner diameter is always the most important thing. With this Cooler Master, the pump is 1/4 inch. It's a 1/4 inch diameter on the fittings. So you want to get 1/4 inch diameter on your tubing. I do have some 1/4 inch fittings. They actually just came in today. But you know something? I don't need them, because warming this up and putting those on, they're probably tighter than they could ever be, even with using clamps. I mean, these things are going to be on there forever. They're not going nowhere. So that's some of the most important things to do. Again, try to plan your cabling well. Always use good hose. Very important. And we'll be back to take a quick look at the final product in a second. Okay, so once we get the clamps lined up, with these clamps are made of aluminum, so you may want to make sure that you pull them together good. Get it lined up. It just bit too. You get them lined up and you do your thing. I think we got enough in there now. Yeah, they use these crazy little Allen key things. goes. Okay. So, final thoughts. For me, it was fun. Something to do. Like I said, I was bored. I had got like 3 of them MSIs. I had some of these. I was going to use the Enermax in there because I do like the square shape. But all in all, the Cooler Master, I just thought it was going to be a better fit for it. And it actually worked out well. And what I did like about the Cooler Master is it doesn't have ARGB. You don't even really need it. But it does have RGB, 12 volt 4 pin. And you have your power. What you will do, once you run your power to this, basically, this is pretty simple. Give you a quick show on how that works. The same goes for all these. Actually, it's identical. So what we'll do is I'll just show you right here. Okay, we have the 4-pin power. Make sure you can see this well. Okay, we have the 4-pin power. Once you have your SATA going in here, what you are going to do, make sure it lines up correctly. There is a little groove in there. It's just like you get on the motherboard. This one's made by Cooler Master. I also have an Asus one in there that is only for ARGB. This one does a little bit of both. I like it. I've used them before. I also use the extenders. So you're going to take your power. Whether it's a 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. It's still 12 volt. One goes in here. And then you have your, with this, I ended up going RGB lights, not ARGB. And it plugs right in. There we go. Once the power gets turned on, we run the power, SATA into that. Bingo. The same thing goes for this. See, this one's a 3, still 12 volts. It's just, I don't know why some companies do it. I've never stopped to ask, but they do. Yeah, still 12 volts. Just a little different way of sliding it on. All the headers on the motherboard, same thing. They're all 4-pin. So maybe it's just I don't know, maybe they save a penny on every piece or something. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for this. The next video will be this getting put on. I'll probably do something with the fill, showing the fluid go through it real quick. But that you can see pretty much anywhere else. The main reason I did this whole video is I wanted to go over, more than anything, I wanted to go over the fittings, the hose, the diameters, things that I didn't see in other videos that I kind of found concerning, because let's face it, if you're going to go out and buy these things, you want to be able to have a good idea of what you're getting into. Again, you can imagine if the plugs and the fittings, the threading wasn't all one size. That's why they call them G and a quarter. It's actually, you'll see it, it's a large G, a 1/4. So it looks like a quarter. We call it G quarter. That is exactly the size of the fitting, threads, and the plugs on almost every one of these, except for the aftermarket ones. They're a little bit smaller. But whenever you're building something, this is what the size you're going to get. Because if everyone had a different one, you can imagine the chaos that there would be with doing this. It would be insane. Far as fans go, This is a decent fan right here. You don't want to get you want to get something above 9 blades, because even though it's an open air, you still want to be able to move air through there. And if you're running with one of those 6 blade, 7 blade fans, those big ones, those are basically, them are case fans. They're not high pressure fans to blow air directly straight through, kind of give you that. Best way I can describe it would have to be like a tornado. You want that air twisted and pushed straight through in a line. You don't want it blown out all over the place. You can go either way with the air. This is going to blow through. I think it just looks cleaner than having the little plastic things up top. I'm using a good rubber hosing. The pump, we'll see how that holds out. I'm sure it won't have no problem moving the fluid. I didn't do nothing crazy with the fluid. And Alpha Cool. So far, I mean, I know there's other companies, EK, there's a ton of companies, but this place, you can get your standard size. They even make one they call a Monstro. This is a 45. There's a 60. And then there's a Monstro. It comes in like a 420, even a 5 fan one. The thing is this thick. That's if you're going to do extreme cooling. But 45 millimeter. Your standard fans. Your standard tubing. Cooler Master pump. So basically, I made this I piecemealed it. I kind of cannibalized another pump to do this, but hey, you know, it's something I wanted to do, and I had the stuff, so I did it. And if anybody ever needs any help with anything like this, feel free, hit me up. There'll be another video out on when I put this thing together. When this goes on the board, when this goes on the wet bench, when the CPU, video card, whatnot goes on, this is going to get installed. I will do a video, and I'll probably do a short one of running this pump. I'll have to unscrew these, and I'll run this pump, and I'll show how the fluid goes through everywhere and gets everything. So for now, I hope you enjoyed this. I know I always forget to say this at the video, and I get quite a few views, but really give me a thumbs up, subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps me out a lot. It helps out the channel, makes me feel better. So everybody stay safe, have a good day.